Hello and welcome back to this series of CS Stories on Expedition, where I joined the Endurance 22 expedition to locate the shipwreck of Sir Ernest Shackleton, an old British explorer. So what is the expedition really about? The expedition is named Endurance 22, which derives of the name of the ship that Ernest Shackleton used in the British Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition in 1914 to 1917. And the goal of that expedition was actually not to get stuck in the sea ice, but they wanted to be the first to traverse the Antarctic continent and cross the Antarctic. So that was a big exploration goal, but they never got so far. They got stuck in the southern Weddell Sea into the sea ice, and the ship started to drift. So, as Shackleton had never planned to really get stuck in the ice, the ship wasn't that well prepared. Endurance was a very strong vessel, a wooden vessel, particularly probably one of the strongest vessels that were built at the time. But the particular hull shape, etc., was not designed for surviving ice pressure, as was, for example, the Fram from Nansen. So Shackleton was actually really lucky that the ship survived quite long in the ice and they drifted for quite a distance throughout the Weddell Sea. But at some point the ship got cracked open, water entered the ship, and at some point the ship sank. That is when the real history began. Then they survived on the ice, drifted with the ice until the ice edge basically, and from there, with the few lifeboats they had left, made a voyage to Elephant Island. The problem was that in 1915, 16, nobody was on Elephant Island. It's still today a very desolate piece of rock in the Antarctic Peninsula. So at that point, Shackleton had to again step into one of his lifeboats, the James Caird, and put sails on it and sail across the Southern Ocean to a whaling station in South Georgia, which is an amazing undertaking. He succeeded and returned a few months later back to Elephant Island to pick up all his crew, and that's what that expedition is really famous about, that everybody survived that expedition, that nobody died during that expedition. So it's one of the few tragedies in polar science where a ship got crushed, but actually everybody got out quite well. So that is what this expedition is about, and we are going to look for the shipwreck at the bottom of the Weddell Sea, and hope that we can learn a bit more about the history and also preserve the current status of the ship at the seafloor to protect it as a natural heritage or historic heritage site.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Let's get this all set up. All right. Hi, guys. I kind of cut off the video a little bit early because we're both getting our kitties ready. How are you, Paul?
I'm good. How
Paul's
are you?
Paul's having fun. Welcome, Paul. We'll get it all set up, and then we'll show everybody Shackleton. All right, let me get you, and then I've got my Shackleton. Look, look. So, well, we have Black Cat Night. Kind of
Yes, that's
unplanned,
right.
but we do. We have Black Kitty Night here. This one, he's drooling on the table.
Susan,
Maybe he
I'm on a
knows.
video.
I think he knows. I think he knows. Come on, where's the star of the show? Where's
Come on.
Shackleton? There's Shackleton. All right.
Hey, you're too close to the camera, Shackleton.
Oh
Come
yeah,
on.
we need. Let's give
Yeah.
Shackleton a big applause. Yay!
Yes, he's got a little bit
Uh-oh.
of food enticement here.
Why isn't it working? Because I didn't click it. All right, let me click
There you
it and
go.
before I get. Okay. Here's for the cats. This is Buddy, and that's Shackleton. And Buddy is the one watches Shackleton when I put the iPad on the bed and you're on with Shackleton. This one is the one that watches. What
Ah,
you looking
okay.
over there? All right, well, he wants to go. I got to get him out of here.
There you go.
Just scratch the living crap out of me. All right, what did I do? I screwed something. Oh, I dropped my microphone. Hang on. Let me fix everything. All right, guys, that's the beauty of live. Oh, somehow it came undone. Oh, shit. Well, I screwed up my microphone. That's not good. Hang on. Hang on. So, talk, Paul. Tell everybody how you are while I try to fix this crap on my professional live stream. No, I
Um.
can't.
Oh, I'm good.
All right. I don't know what happened to it. So, I
Just
guess I'm
played a
just going
little.
to.
Can't hear you.
Okay. Here we go. Hey, there you go. Yay, everybody. All right. So, Paul, welcome. Now that we got all the silliness out. And
Yes, we've got the cats out of the
we
way,
got the
and
cats out of the way. Did you get to see the vid?
yes, I did. Very nice
I
video.
I
There were
like.
loads and loads of pictures from that expedition.
Oh,
That because of
amazing.
course they all survived. I think didn't every single crew, of
Every
course,
single
crew
did.
member survived,
Yep. I know
and
everybody's
they're
going to ask
remembered
about
not
the
for
dogs.
being on the ship and sinking, but for the journey across the ice.
Oh my god.
And then
Incredible.
they got to some island, and
Elephant
then
Island,
Shackleton went on to Georgia
Georgia.
Island or something, and then the boat went out to rescue all the rest of the crew when the
What
ice melted.
a story. The whole thing that got me started, well, I saw it popped up in my feed about the Endurance 22. And then I contacted you right away. Come on, you have to come on with me because this is perfect for us, Shackleton. And look at you. See, you're already smiling. That's good. We get Paul to smile on this channel. So this is the book, Shackleton's Way. And I've had this book, guys. Okay. See how it's disgusting. It was in a box. I've had this book since college. And this book is it was in a leadership class during graduate school. And it's quite a while ago. I'm not even going to tell you how long ago. But this book is leadership lessons, right? From the great Antarctic explorer. And they teach this shit in college and they use Ernest Shackleton's management style for people like me that managed around people, I guess. But it was really good. It was really good, Paul. I don't know if you have this one, but
No, I
they
haven't read it. I haven't heard of it or read
definitely.
it. I'll have to get a copy of it.
Yeah, I found it.
It
So
was.
that's what got me.
I mean, do you remember the ads that he put in the paper and so on to find men for his
Yes.
exploration?
5,000 of them. And he only took like what, 27 or 28.
Yeah, but I
What
mean,
a
his ad was
story.
something like, basically saying it was probably a one-way trip,
Oh yeah. That's
right?
right.
Like he was saying,
Scary.
you have to really isolated conditions, required tremendous endurance, good chance of not returning, sort of thing.
And
And
these
that
guys,
appealed,
whew,
of course, to many people at that time. That was 1914 or just before, right? So World War I times, and Yeah, he had no trouble recruiting people, and but it was an amazing feat that they managed to, a lot of luck involved too. I mean, a lot of things
Oh
could have
my
gone
God.
wrong.
But according to Shackleton's way, it was his leadership style that saved those guys. Saved their because he was a leader. They say he's like the probably one of the he was called the greatest leader that ever came on God's earth, bar none. All right, so everybody, Ernest Shackleton. That's why Paul has a cat named Shackleton. There you
So
go.
what are the tricks for his leadership then?
Okay, well,
I
you
mean, do you
want me to
remember
get my
any,
glasses on? Do I remember any? No. My God. I mean, I practice good leadership. Look, the book changed me a lot. It did, and it did. I really liked. Plus, the teacher was somebody I liked a lot. Uh, all
makes a
right.
big difference, right?
Shackleton wasn't afraid to change his mind as often as the situation dictated. So I mean, it's all of these principles of how you manage these guys. How did he get everybody to work together? I guess if you start me off on this, I probably can remember. It's getting people to work together. It's teamwork. It's giving everybody equity so that
Right.
everybody on the team has an equitable chance of food or work. They're feeling
Right.
comfortable. I mean, I could go on. You want to turn on
Yeah.
my human resources person?
That sounds like a bit like what SpaceX does.
Let's hear more about that.
The engineers all work in the exactly same location as the people that are building the rockets. Like they're
Wow,
all in cubicles next to each other, interacting. Anybody can go and talk to anybody else.
that's
Musk
cool.
is there in a cubicle, no different, with his office.
Really?
Although, he has the final word, of course, but he does listen to what everybody else says.
Which
So,
is a great
I'm
manager.
reading a book on sort of the early days of SpaceX, and it's interesting. It brings up a lot of, things with the management style. Like, you get rid of all the levels of bureaucracy, and everybody sort of buys into the idea of what you're doing. So then they're willing to work really
Oh,
long hours and problem solve until they get things done. So it's interesting. But let's go back to the expedition. So
yeah, that's
this isn't the
exciting coming
first
up.
time they've been looking
No,
for it, right?
nope. And actually, I have a couple of articles to pull up with you that we can look at, and there's the two from the BBC. One was from 2015, which has amazing pictures, and then the other one was just the other day. That was another one, just came up. So
Right.
up. See, I've got you on the screen now. I'm going to edit your little overlay while we do this. Silly stuff. All right, guys, see how it works? Paul's on the bottom. Watch. We'll do this. Paul, I guess I didn't do enough editing because you didn't come on early enough. So you have a big square here. Yep. So anyway, yes, they can you tell us while I'm farting around with this before we get the article up, tell us a little bit more about SpaceX because I don't talk about SpaceX. I don't know a lot about it, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's worth looking at. There's sort of, I mean, when you think about it, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about disruptive technologies, right?
Mm.
Like we're
Mm.
talking, you have established huge companies with huge amounts of money, lots of government contracts, and they do things a certain way, and it's very expensive to do what they do. And then you have this guy comes along, he starts up a rocket company, and
I'm playing.
they say that if you want to be the best, if you want to be a millionaire, the easiest way to become a millionaire is to be a billionaire and start up a rocket company, right?
Oh,
Because there's huge risks, but the whole idea was to get to space as cheaply as possible. So I mean,
as
they
cheaply
decided
as possible, cutting
just
all the
to
corners
build every
possible.
component that they could themselves and not buy it from
Wow.
other people, and then not you don't have to worry about the timing of getting components, etc.
Wow.
And they just had a really devoted team. But the expedition, I think we should get back. We shouldn't get too far down these rabbit holes. So
Okay, well, I've
the
got the
the
first
expedition's
one.
actually fascinating because they figure they almost found the ship in 2019, but it's in the Weddell Sea, and there's generally ice in that whole region, and it's moving in a clockwise fashion, I believe. And it's just the problem
Mm.
is that, so they sent a ship out, um, a few years ago, and they lowered submersibles. And but then the ice closed in on them, and they had to leave. And I think they might have even lost their remotely operated vehicle. So what
Yeah,
they're
they
doing
had
this
some
time
really interesting ones.
is they've got two more sophisticated remotely operated vehicles. They're connected by, they're tethered. They're not completely isolated from the ship, so they're tethered on fiber optic cable, so they can sit on the ship and see the live feeds coming back, so they can readjust the search. And they've
Wow.
pretty much narrowed down where they think the ship is to this fairly small grid. I mean, it's still fairly small. It's still fairly large. Like it's what, something like 8 miles by 15 miles or something. But they can be far off the bottom and have a side scan sonar, very high resolution. So it's very high frequency sonar. So it can find very, very fine detail. And they can image the bottom over a large area. And if they usually, when a ship goes down, there's some sort of debris trail.
Oh, yeah.
So this ship was broken up sort of by the ice, and many pieces would have gone down to the bottom before the ship actually did. So those will leave, depending on the way the ice was drifting, those will, and the currents in the water column going down to the bottom, and it's deep, it's 3,000 meters.
Yeah.
So if something's sinking, even a fairly heavy, like heavy objects will go, to the bottom much faster, so have less drift, whereas lighter objects will be carried by the currents and spread much further away. So you end up getting if the whole thing goes down at once, you get a debris field where you get all the heavier objects. You get the main part of the ship and the heavy objects close by. And then as you get further and further away, you get this like field or line of debris of lighter and lighter objects. So if they're doing a survey with the ROVs and the side scan sonar, they just generally they find the debris field first. They find a whole bunch of different debris, and then they just
Okay.
follow the line of that debris to where the actual body of the ship would
Oh my
be.
gosh.
But this
I think it's
wasn't a
fascinating.
normal sinking, right? It wasn't just, the ship didn't just sink,
No, it fell apart
right?
up in the
It
ice.
was
It
being
fell over. And,
crushed, right? And
yeah.
pieces would be coming off, and it was
Yeah.
filling with water, but the ice kept it up. And so the debris field should be enormous, basically. And the water is deep enough that, like if you have really large icebergs and the water's, like if the water's shallower, the
Yeah.
bottom of the ice, of course, 90% of the iceberg's under the water, and if it goes down far enough to the bottom, it can scour the bottom and destroy whatever is on the bottom. So that's not the case here, right? And the water is very cold, so basically, if they find the pieces of the ship, it should be pretty much intact. Like it won't have been
Oh my God.
destroyed by worms or
And they're
marine
only going to
creatures.
photograph it. They're not going to bring it up. They're photographing it with all of that equipment. And oh, it's just going to be an amazing book. I can't wait. I hope they
Yeah,
are
and
successful.
yes, and they're hoping to bring the ship to that position and then operate the ROVs, the remotely operated vehicles with the
Yeah.
sonars from the ship. But if the ice moves in and they can't do that, they're going to carry all the equipment across the ice to the proper location. The
Yeah, I'm going to
GPS
pull up
tells them
this.
this is the proper location. Then they're going to cut some holes in the ice and lower and operate the ROVs from sitting on top of the ice. So they're ready for that contingency plan as well.
I've got this map up. It's an overview of Cape Town to the Weddell Sea. Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks pretty. It shows you where the area is right there. This is the website of the Endurance 22. I'm just looking for some pictures maybe that they have on this not website. This is their Twitter site, but maybe there's some pictures as you're talking. that
yeah. So
they're
so
showing
the
the.
so I think they'll probably find it this time. I think
Well,
they're
I hope so.
it's a matter of time. I mean, it took a long time to find even large ships like the Titanic, for example, right? I mean, people
Yeah. Oh,
searched for
yeah.
it for many, many years, and it was Robert Ballard and his expeditions. They had a lot of really good submersibles, the equipment, and he was actually working. They were working on another project. I think Ballard was actually out there with the equipment to try to find. He was doing some work for the military, I think, and trying to identify, find some submarines, um, some Cold War submarines, to get some, or maybe not so far back, more, but submarines that had gone down. So it was a military contract, and then he had a bit of time to spare. He had a week or so. So he thought, well, and he'd looked for the Titanic before, years before. I think
Mhm.
they found it in '85 or something like that. Something like that. So anyway, they only had about a week, and they started looking for it again. But the sonars are so good now.
See
They
if we
can
could
cover
find a
such a
picture.
wide swath, and then if you get targets of interest, and then you can focus on your targets of interest, and you can use magnetometers. You can see it's a metal object, and so on.
Oh, that's
And
exciting.
he's had a lot of success in marine exploration. Robert
Cool.
Ballard. He also
Robert
found
Ballard, huh?
the Bismarck, the German battleship that
Oh,
was
really?
really worried Britain when it broke out. It was hiding in the fjords of Norway, and then it broke out into the Atlantic, and basically their convoys were all at risk. So the British Navy basically sent everything they had in a hunt for it, and they got lucky. They sent up some biplanes. This is World War II, but they sent up some vintage biplanes with torpedoes, and they managed to take out the rudder of the Bismarck, and then that allowed the main navy to come. And of course, before they stopped the Bismarck, it sank the HMS Hood, which was the battleship, which was the pride of the British Navy at the time. It was over. The battle was over in minutes. Like, there was a couple of
Minutes.
salvos from the Bismarck, and the Hood had wooden decks between the funnels, and
Yeah.
World War II had wooden decks, and a couple of shells went right between the funnel, or one shell, and blew up the magazine, and it destroyed the whole ship. It was just the battle was over before it started, really. So I've always been sort of a bit of a naval buff, with the ships. And of course, everybody knows the story, the Titanic. But in Canada, we had our own Titanic, which was the Empress of Ireland. Was in
Oh.
the St. Lawrence River, and it was foggy. It was near Rimouski, I believe, and it basically collided with a ship in the fog, and it went down in minutes with a huge loss of life. Over 1,000 people, I believe.
Well,
But
that's
they,
pretty
but the
scary.
people on the ship weren't they weren't as wealthy as those on the Titanic. And it didn't. I mean, most Canadians probably couldn't even tell you about the Empress of Ireland.
No,
But
I've
but
hardly
it's
remember
interesting. I mean, a
hearing
friend of
about
mine
it.
is actually a marine archaeologist. He works for Parks
Okay, wait.
Canada.
Hang out one sec. Balance your camera, please, Paul.
Yeah,
So,
my camera's shaking a bit. Hang on. Okay,
okay,
let me
because
just get it.
we
Uh,
don't have to be all formal on this show tonight. We are just enjoying ourselves. I'm trying out. I didn't have everything set up exactly how I wanted it, but I certainly got the video done. So, all right. Now,
yeah,
how's
that's
that,
better.
guys? Are we made? Okay. So then Paul was just—he was really secretly
Don't want to
dancing.
make everybody dizzy. So
No, no. But this is I'm fascinated. I had the graphic up before. Endurance 22 reached the world official virtual exchange classroom. What I'm imagining, and I'm just going to bring this up now, we might as well, because Paul said, not sure why they are finding the Endurance would be such an important project in that explorers emptied it of its most important stores before it was crushed. I mean, sure, there's some interest. Okay, I'm going to answer that first, and then Paul, you can figure it out because it's education. Colleges, universities, students will be going along with them, just like the space program, just like SpaceX. This is the ocean program. It will have research other than just looking for this. This is also an excuse to get these guys down there to conduct research on the ice. And Paul, take it away.
Yeah, there may be some like the wood should be quite well preserved, um, and it's just it's a bit of history. It's we like exploration stories, right? We like searching for things that are missing to solve mysteries, right? Like and I mean they can learn a lot from there's probably some marine growth on the wood. There's not the
Yeah.
worms to destroy the wood. The water's very cold. And sending a submersible down there, they'll probably see some artifacts that they may want to bring up
That's
and put in a
wild.
museum or something. And it just kind of fills in a little bit of knowledge about what happened. Maybe they'll find out um, and maybe yeah, it's there's always an unknown element. You always
Hell
discover
yeah.
things that you don't expect,
And they get to
even
use all
though
the toys.
yeah, you test the technologies, and
Yep.
who knows. It's also tough to do, and nobody's done it before, right? That's always a big draw. You want to do things that
Sure.
nobody's done. Be nice if there was a bit of treasure on it or something, but I don't think so. I mean, some old scientific instruments and so on. But yeah, I mean, they had a lot of time to get stuff off, but they could only get the light stuff off because they were going to be traveling over the ice for long distances, so they couldn't carry too much,
No,
right?
no. And
Do you
now
know
with
how
the
many were on the ship,
which
Sandy? I
ship?
mean, it looked
The
like there
old
were
or the
20
new?
or 30 guys or something.
On the ship, the Shackleton ship or the new ship, the
The
Endurance?
Shackleton ship,
I
the
think it was
Endurance.
20, I think there was 20, 27, 28.
Yeah, it looks
It
like,
was less than
from the
30.
footage,
Yeah, it was less than
it looked
30,
like
and they all lived, but the dogs didn't. Oh, that's a
the
horrible
dogs.
story.
Well, they ate the dogs, I guess, to
No, that
survive.
I think is kind of an old wives' tale. I think that what happened was Ernest, uh, the manager he was, understood that the men were attached to these dogs, but the dogs were using the resources that were available for the men to survive, and they had to make the untimely
Choices.
and yes, very
Yeah,
difficult choices. And the choice was that the dogs had to go if the guys wanted to live.
right.
That whole eating thing, I don't think, at least on the Endurance, they didn't do that. Not on the Endurance. Maybe they did it on one of the other missions because he did other missions.
Well, they
Shackleton did.
wouldn't waste that meat, would they?
You want me to look it up?
Well, no,
I'll
I can
pull it
almost
up, man.
guarantee that
I
the
saw
dogs
it.
were probably whatever the
Maybe
history
they
is recorded.
did.
They
Oh,
ate the
God.
dogs to
It was
survive, right?
awful.
I
Yeah.
mean, at least they didn't have to eat other party members. Like, remember, they
Oh, the Donner
alive
Party?
story, the plane going down in the Andes with
Oh,
the
that one.
soccer team or rugby team.
Yeah, that's more current than the
Yeah,
Donner Party.
so
Yeah. Oh, this
people
is
do
gruesome
what
night.
they need to do to survive, right?
Yes,
In
of
extreme
course.
situations.
Yeah. Well, Billy Joe says meat stew is meat stew. Actually, it doesn't matter what the meat is. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
yes. Ew.
yeah,
We're
but
getting morbid.
yeah.
Oh.
So it's there's a lot of interesting history that we can find from wrecks. There was a ship that had gone down in the Mediterranean, a couple thousand years ago, and it was very well preserved in that environment. There wasn't much oxygen down at the bottom. It was very deep, and historians could get an awful lot of information about a particular time period. from artifacts that they find on the ships and so on, especially if they're very, very well preserved.
Right.
So that's another. That was so they're finding stuff. I don't remember the name of the ship or anything, but within the last few years, they've found a few major
Cool.
ships that went down thousands of years ago in the Mediterranean. And then,
That's
there's, of
fascinating.
course, everybody likes the stories of the Spanish galleons
Oh, and
and,
the treasure hunters. Yeah.
the treasure hunters, finding those. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done some diving in Bermuda, and
Oh, I don't know.
the reefs around Bermuda are very, very treacherous. So there's literally hundreds of wrecks off
Wow,
Bermuda.
Paul, you're the
So I've
man of
dived
many
on.
mysteries. He's a diver
Yeah,
too.
and
Who would have
the
known?
Bermuda Triangle, right? It just draws
Yeah.
them in, and
Oh, I don't have a circling the drain
so
sound
one of
effect.
the most interesting. So
Yeah.
interesting. And there's stories behind all these ships. So the Mary Celeste was a blockade runner in the Civil War. So paddle on either side, and these ships were very, very long, very narrow. They could go extremely fast to try to run the blockades. The Union was blockading the southern ports, and they needed they would send out ships to Bermuda carrying cotton, and then they would sell the cotton, and they'd get guns and ammunition and stuff carried back. So it would run the blockade. Bermuda was neutral, and so it would basically run the blockades. And anyway, one of those ships, hit a reef and sank, and you can dive on it. It's a great dive. You can see the
Wow.
paddle wheels.
That's cool.
And the reefs around Bermuda, the water's only about 30 feet deep, 30 to 50 feet deep. So it's a very easy dive, and the water's very clear. And the locations of all the ships are marked, so you can take a charter boat from the shore and go in. It's a very easy dive. You don't have to be an expert to do that sort of thing. Off of
Okay. I'll take your word
Charleston,
for it. I've never
off
went I
Charleston,
never
of
went
course,
diving.
there's the first, the Hunley, the submarine, one of the first submarines, the Hunley. It was
Hunley.
operated by, I don't know, 12 guys or something, hand cranking the
Oh, wow.
propeller, so they're all just hand cranking the thing, and they basically had a big spar on the front of the submarine and an explosive. So the idea was you'd surface at night, and you'd run the thing into the side of a ship, and the explosive would go off. But
Boom.
you would hope that the spar or the boom would be long enough so that you didn't sink yourself.
Boom.
Um, and a lot of history. So Clive
Yeah.
Cussler, the novelist who's written lots of the Dirk Pitt sort of adventure novels. He actually has written a few. He wrote a few. I think he died just not too long ago. But he wrote he wrote some nonfiction books about. He used to. That was one of his things. He made lots of money selling his novels, and then he was kind
Yeah.
of figured himself kind of an explorer. So he actually
Well,
located the Hunley off of Charleston. Um, and they think that the tide probably carried it out, and then they couldn't make it back, and something went wrong, and it went down. So they recovered it. It's
right.
in a Charleston museum.
He
Uh,
paid to go? He paid because or he how did he finance
yeah,
his
he financed it with his novels.
Okay, because I
Proceeds.
saw a video today that there was an expedition that you could buy your way into some kind of expedition like that for $250,000.
Oh, okay. To where would that be? Like to
I think to go into the Antarctic and go in the in yes,
and try to.
seriously. I
Oh,
wish
okay,
I
yeah.
had that video. I probably could pull it up. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah, so there's
okay,
lots of
rich people, you
yeah,
know.
there's lots of good stories like that. I actually did some diving. I went on a boat, and I went out. We didn't go to the Hunley because the Hunley, they recovered the Hunley. They brought it up. It wasn't very
Yeah.
big. It was very difficult to find,
Let me see.
but it was pretty much intact. I mean, when they brought it up, it was like it was. There was this legend. One of the guys on the submarine, he was shot in a battle in the Civil War, and he had a gold coin and the bullet went right into the coin. I don't know, maybe it bent the coin, and it
Okay.
saved his life. So he would carry that coin with him,
Oh, wow. The lucky
right? So there's
coin, the
lots of
heart coin.
interesting stories about that. But I went on a charter boat, and we went out and did some diving off, Charleston, and the water is
That's
very
nice,
murky
Paul.
because of the river carrying all the sediment out, and very very fast currents. So and the diving conditions can change from hour to hour. So we went on this dive onto this wreck, which
Yeah.
it was a boat that was carrying cement. So it had all of these packages of cement in these bags, and of course, when it went down, the cement all hardened, and the paper or cardboard that was holding the cartons together all just disappeared. So you have all of these that look like cement blocks on the bottom, and there's a reef there now because there's a coral reef there basically, and huge numbers of fish and so on. So we
Beautiful.
dived on that wreck in the morning. The water was perfectly clear and it was nice. We went down, and then after in the afternoon we went on the same dive, and the water was like super murky, and we went down, and we made the mistake of not following the anchor rope down to the boat. So we
Oh,
just went down
really?
and thought we were going to find the thing. Completely murky, couldn't find the ship.
No kidding,
We're
Paul.
under looking for it for about 20 minutes. Then we
Wow.
surfaced, and we were like there was about a 5 knot, 4 or 5 knot current going out to sea. So of course, as we were underwater, not knowing where we were, this current was
Yeah.
just carrying us further and further away from
Oh
the
my
boat.
God.
So after about 20 minutes, when we surfaced, we were several. Well, you can do the math. If it's 5 nautical miles per
You could
hour,
do
in
the math.
a third of an hour, you go almost a mile and a half, or
Okay.
2 nautical miles away from the boat. So then we had to swim on the surface and go back, and then we did it right the second time. We went down the rope, but it was a bit dicey there. You're being, I mean, it wasn't a risky situation. You dive with a buddy. It happened to a lot of other
Cool.
divers in the diving party. As we started swimming back to the boat on the horizon, these other divers popped up, and the current had
Right.
got them and done the same thing to them, and then another
Oh my
party
God.
came. The same thing happened. So there were 6 of us swimming back to this boat. I
That's
think the
cool.
captain of the boat, he said, "Oh, these newbies, let's get them right," or something like that. So that'll teach them not to follow
Doobies.
the instructions and follow the rope down to the bottom. So, when you're
Uh,
diving, it's, the conditions can change very quickly in the ocean, right? That's a different story from the lakes. But
oh,
I
and
did some
I.
diving. I dived up in one of the nicest spots in Ontario is a place called Tobermory. They call it Fathom 5 Provincial Park. And there's a lot of wrecks up in that area because
Really?
lakes can actually, the
Okay.
waves in lakes can be more damaging to
Mm-hmm.
ships than in the ocean, because when a storm comes up, the waves could be much closer. The wave peaks can be much closer together
Together.
in a lake, a lake as
I
opposed to
lived
the,
on the Great Lakes, Lake Erie, 24
yeah,
years. Lake Erie.
and of course,
Yeah.
you're
Uh,
probably familiar with Gordon Lightfoot and his
yes. The
his
Edmund
song,
Fitz.
"The Wreck of
Yeah.
the Edmund
Edmund
Fitzgerald,"
Fitzgerald. I
right?
swear I was
So
thinking about starting to hum it before when you started to talk about the wrecks. All right.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's
Can't play it. We'll get a copyright.
yeah. So this friend of mine
Yeah.
who he did marine archaeology for years for
Oh,
Parks Canada. So they mostly in the Great Lakes, but so he knows he's dived on just about every wreck.
wow.
In
That's
the
cool.
Great Lakes, around Ontario,
Yeah.
some of the other Great Lakes, not just Lake Ontario, but in marine archaeology, I mean, they try to, there's a lot of ships that they haven't identified, what the ship is, so they try to find, the easiest thing is if you can find a bell or something with the name, but otherwise, that doesn't happen. You have to look at the cargo, what it was carrying, and the design of the ship, and they look at the if the wood is somewhat preserved, they look at how the ship was constructed, like how the keel was connected, how the boards were
That's
connected,
pretty
the type
cool.
of nails that were used, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's a bit, you're
Marine
just a bit of a detective,
archaeologist,
and then
detective.
they spend just as much time in the researching, like in the archives and stuff. Talking to local people, and it's actually quite interesting. He had an interesting job there.
That is
Um,
interesting. We had a Lake Erie. We had my school that I worked at. We had the Great Lakes Center, and so we had a research boat, research equipped. I remember because I remember there was a big deal about getting staff and hiring and all the. We had Captain John who did all the research diving. Unfortunately, Captain John died in a diving accident in Lake Erie. It was
Diving,
horrible.
yeah.
It was horrible. We were in mourning at the school. He was a great guy. He was actually didn't live far from me with his wife and kids. It sucked royally, but we got a lot of research done on the lakes with the Great Lakes Center, and it was pretty. I haven't been. I retired. I'm not there, but I know that it was a good center. Had a lot of connections with a lot of other schools, and they were doing some interesting research on the what was it at the time? Not indigenous things that were
Yeah.
coming in the lake from the ballast of boats that came in from other areas. There was a lot of, well, not zebra mussels. It was something different. I don't remember what it was. I can't. Maybe somebody in the chat will know what was in Lake Erie that was messing things up in my scientific estimation. They were studying this creature.
Huh.
Yeah, it was interesting. I just can't remember. That's terrible. The brain's
Yeah,
got too
it's
much in it.
interesting. It's kind of, you hear every so often, like a lot of stuff
Sea
just
lamprey?
disappears underwater,
Sea
right? And
lamprey.
then
Yeah,
it can be
maybe.
kind of lost to history for years and years. So there's a guy. I'm sure there's many other people doing it, but there's this one guy. He studies. Is a hobby. He loves to study satellite images and Google Earth images of lakes and rivers and stuff. And he sees something that looks kind of interesting, and then he'll go there, and then he'll dive. He'll scuba dive down, and
Yeah.
he found he in I don't I think it might have been in Florida or something. I can't remember where, but he saw this funny looking object from one of the satellite images that are publicly available to people. It looked like a car,
Sure.
you know. So he went there, and he dove on the thing, and it was a car, sure enough. And they towed it up, and basically, there was two people inside the car, two bodies, and the
Oh,
car had these people had disappeared in, like, in like 50 years ago,
oh my
right?
God.
These two people just vanished. So it was an unsolved mystery,
Mystery.
and they just went off the road, and they went into a canal or something, and
Wow.
basically sat there. The car sat there with their bodies inside for 50
That's
years, until this
years.
guy comes along. He saw something on the
Wow.
web, on an image, and thought, oh, this looks kind of
Wow.
funny. He goes there, and uncovered it, and got the local authorities to tow it up, and mystery solved. So but I mean,
Yeah,
things
but
like that,
mystery
like,
solved. What did I mean, what condition were they skeletal? 50 years the water just ate them
yeah, it
away.
was
What was I
basically
mean, it was
just
just had to be
bones, right?
yeah.
But from
Oh, I'm
dental
sure that
records and stuff, and
yeah.
they checked
Well,
back in
somebody had to
history, all
do
the
that
stories,
job.
like, they had a license plate for the car,
Damn.
and they knew the date of the car, like the make and model of the car, and
Wow.
they just went back into the records, and sure enough, this couple had vanished, completely disappeared,
Dang. So your
right?
friend
So
found him. Wow.
yeah, so
Wow.
it's
How interesting all this is. I mean,
and
of course
a
and
lot of the Clive Cussler,
yeah.
who found the Hunley, um, he did his fascination was the Civil War. And so he would try to find, there are a lot of battles during the Civil War along the Mississippi and stuff, right? A lot of different boats and so on.
Yeah.
And he would actually try to find, all the wrecks from some of the battles and so on. And the river moves, right? So over a century, the river can actually change
Take it.
course. So he uncovered some of the Civil War wrecks, or wrecks from that time, things that had sunk in the Mississippi, and now they're in the middle of some farmer's field because the Mississippi has changed its course.
Wow,
You
that's
know,
cool
so
too.
he finds ships in people's fields.
Jeez,
Ships that
that's
sank,
amazing.
1860s, whatever,
Yeah.
in 150, 160 years ago in farmers' fields now with a
Hmm.
magnetometer. He does the research. He goes to the area. He finds the old maps,
Oh,
tries to see what the course of the Mississippi was and
wow.
how it's changed over time. And he goes
Interesting
up and
jobs.
says, to some farmer, "Can I scan your field with a magnetometer?" And then he
My
goes and he
God.
finds the ship, and it's excavated, ends up in a museum or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really interesting stuff, right?
Bunch of college kids go and excavate from the local archaeological dig schools. The kids that are taking archaeology.
Yeah, yeah,
That's how
exactly.
they dig
So,
it up. Yeah, that's
so,
very, very interesting.
yeah. So I think they've got a good shot. The guys who are the marine
In the
archaeologists who are going out to try to find the endurance, right?
well, they'll
It's a
be
piece
in
of
their little orange canisters. I don't have any picture to pull up. It's there. They you can't dive. Okay, segue. Here's what I'm interested also in how they take the temperature measurements when they go down at probably every level of ocean. They're going to have temperature measurements. That will be interesting to understand what they mean in relationship to the amount of heat that maybe Antarctica has absorbed, like the Arctic is absorbing.
right. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the ocean's actually warming at every level, but
Yeah.
when you get down to the abyss, the deepest parts, the warming is very, very minuscule,
So
right? I mean, the
very
surface is
cold.
warming much, much faster, of
Yeah.
course, and then depending on the mixing, the vertical mixing of the water and the ocean currents and things. So they so they use what they drop down these instruments. Um, it's a whole series. It's just you might have seen the image. It's a big, large, circular looking array, and there's all of these water bottles on it, and there's these little solenoids. So
Oh
the
yeah.
top of the bottle, the bottle will close automatically at a certain depth, right? And that way you capture a water sample at a particular
Yeah.
depth. So as you go down, it's capturing water samples all the way, at intervals, maybe every 100 meters, or depends on how deep it goes. It might
That'll
go
be
down to
interesting.
thousands of feet and then capture some water every 100 feet or every 100 meters or whatever, 100 feet,
I'm
and
also
then
interested in what they find in the water.
yeah, so they measure
Microplastic.
things like the oxygen level,
Okay.
the chlorophyll A, which gives you an idea as to how much phytoplankton's in it, the pH level of the water, the temperature, of course, salinity, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff like that.
This is going to be cool. They're going to learn a lot. It's not just a treasure hunt. This is really
Yeah,
going
and
to
then you
give
have
good data.
these autonomous, sort of they're like the UAVs, but they're underwater. They're like drones, but underwater drones, and they can, they have they go down to various depths, maybe 3,000
Yeah.
feet, 5,000 feet, or whatever, and then they surface. So they go down and come up, in a certain interval, and when they come to the surface, they radio all the data they've collected up to some satellite, and then they repeat, doing what they're
God.
doing.
Not in Shackleton's day.
So those sort
Wow.
of things
We've come a long way in
are kind
108
of
years.
interesting. And then of course the exploration of the Marianas Trench is the deepest part of the ocean. And the U.S. Navy developed this thing in conjunction with the French. The Trieste.
Okay.
They developed a submersible, which then went down to the very, very deepest part of the
Oh.
ocean. Um, and that was in the 60s, I believe. I could have that wrong, right? They wanted to retrieve. They
Somebody
wanted to
might
be
know.
able to, if a submarine sank in that water depth and people were still alive, they wanted to be able to figure out a way to get them out. So it was all research,
Yeah.
geared towards that type of thing. Um, and they and nobody had gone back down to that depth until James Cameron, right, the movie producer, made lots of money from his Hollywood movies, and
Yeah.
he got an engineering team, and they built the submersible, and he went down to the bottom like himself. So that was kind of, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mind, people don't like billionaires, right? I mean, people they have too much money, but if they spend their money on something
Doing
like,
cool shit.
exploration,
Yeah.
at least it makes it not quite as bad, I think. You might disagree,
You're
but
right. No, I don't disagree. I don't well, I think going to I don't know, maybe I'm more interested in the ocean than I am space. I don't know. Fascinating. And I just don't see it as well, the boats pollute. They have to fly to get there, but they're not taking off into space and blowing up so much crap to get out there and then what, orbiting around to look at at the earth from a farther than an airplane. But the ocean diving is just it's fascinating. And the things somebody had made a comment in the chat that said uh did you know that more than 80% of our ocean has yet to be seen? That was Jan. 80% of the ocean. Now, should man even see it though?
well,
Should
I
we?
think women should
Yeah.
definitely see it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not on my bucket list. It's on my interest list, though. My bucket list is the Arctic, actually, Paul. Me and Jennifer. We would really like to take some kind of trip. Do you have a bucket list?
Um, I not really. Like I just
No?
do things. Yeah,
No place you wanna go? Well, you just came you got to travel this year, so that was
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
interesting.
Which was, which was, a nice break. I mean,
Yeah,
nice
and we
break
were very grateful you came on here too. That
from
was
the
cool.
routine. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's, yeah. There's a lot of interesting technologies that there are for the oceans, and I mean, it looked like we might have colonies on the ocean floor at one point. The U.S. Navy did a lot of experiments. In like with the Sea Lab, they call it. Just Google Sea Lab, SEALAB, Sea Lab. So
Yeah,
they
I remember Sea Lab.
right? They put
Yeah.
basically a habitat on a coral reef about 30 feet down or 40 feet down, somewhere in the Florida Keys, and they had people living on there for long
Let's
periods
see.
of time. And they tried to be as self-sufficient as possible. Get all their food from the fish and get sunlight and generate oxygen from the plants and stuff. And it was sort of like a habitat,
I think
that
I
was
have it.
abandoned. It's too bad they didn't sort of keep that
They
up a
have
bit.
well, there's yeah, I don't think it's the same Sea Lab that I'm looking at, but yeah, I heard of I know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to find if there's anything that exemplifies that for us to show the chat.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
seem
part
pretty
of that,
happy.
I think that was connected to the space program, the idea of living sort of with a small group of people for
Yeah.
extended periods of time, out of contact with the rest of humanity.
And that takes good
How people
leadership. What we
yeah, I
began
mean,
with.
how people can get along and survive. If you were on a long space voyage or something. But so you're not
Wow.
too keen on space, then, Sandy. Well, what about if a
Well,
big asteroid comes our way? Don't you want to be able
I
to
looked
do
up.
something?
I looked up. No, I'm gonna die.
I mean,
I'm being
wouldn't it
nihilistic.
be
Well,
ironic if everybody worries so much about climate change and a big
wouldn't it be
comet comes our way, and
wonderful?
then you don't have
Oh
to worry
yeah.
about climate change anymore,
There
right?
you go. Boosh bash. Yeah. True.
So you want to be
True.
able to do something to that asteroid so that you're still able to worry about climate change.
All right, you asked me. I loved space when I was a kid. I knew that we went to the moon. I saw it, So, I guess, but something about the ocean, for some reason, water makes me more interested. Oh,
Yeah,
everybody else, I know that you're a man who is interested in a lot of different things. So I'm sure that you already have a bit of knowledge about what's going on with space exploration. I don't know. NASA, we were more interested, I guess, when Jennifer and I were using these websites for their climate stuff and their
yeah, exactly.
satellites and all that. But, and I'm not going to judge the billionaires. I mean, I can judge them, but I'm not going to judge them if they're doing something right. And anybody that's interested or investing in this ocean research, to me, that's good stuff.
Well, at least we're losing one billionaire rather quickly, right? Zuckerberg, right, in his Facebook,
His metaverse is losing money.
losing something
I
like
saw a Twitter.
$250 billion
Jesus
decline in the stock price in one day. That was pretty substantial.
Well,
He probably isn't too happy, but I don't know. I'm surprised that at some point that there isn't kind of like some sort of taxes as you get more and more, make more and more money. You're taxed more and more. I mean, they don't like that. They
in the
generally pay less
United
and less.
States, we're an
I know
oligarchy.
they
They
pay
don't give
less and
two
less. It sort of
shits.
goes against the
It's
United
disgusting.
States philosophy, the ideal,
Oh, God.
everybody can work hard and become like a gazillionaire or
Pull
whatever.
yourself up by the bootstraps. It's a casino. Like you say, climate casino. Living in the United States under our system is like living in a casino. Only we're the workers, the serfs. Well, I
This,
mean, in my lifetime, it's just everything has gotten bigger, 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 and the wedge between the very rich and everybody else is insane. And
yeah,
you watched it too.
yeah. I mean, it's just the inequality. It's I mean,
Inequality.
if looking back in history, I mean, there were, the peasants in the fields and then the kings and queens, or then it was like who owned land and who didn't own land, right? The people that owned land were very, very wealthy. Everybody else worked for the people that owned the land, right? For the farming or whatever. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you learned a lot about. I've learned an awful lot about the history from some of the Netflix shows, mostly because I watch Outlander or I watch The Last Kingdom. These historical. So you learn a lot about the historical times, and then of course you want to know, well, are they just how much of this is being made up and how much is actually based on history, and
Oh,
then you start. So I've been reading a lot about Scottish clans lately and different battles, right?
oh, here we
As a
go.
result of watching Outlander, and then I've been watching The Last Kingdom, and then of course that takes place, about over 1,000 years ago. It's about 980 or something. The different kings and
The
the
systems.
feuds and the fights,
Yeah.
and if you believe the Netflix shows, it was an awful bloodthirsty back in those times, right?
Yeah. Well, I won't say it. I was going to say to read the good book. I've been watching American Horror Story, believe it or not. I never watched it when it was on television, and I flicked on it on Netflix, and I got addicted to. I was binge watching. American Horror Story could just be any live stream during the day that talks about American politics, really. But literally, but I was watching the acting. Just it was
Yeah,
interesting. It was good acting. They're crazy.
yeah,
But there's so much violence on. There's so much violence. There's so much blood. I don't know how we got from the Antarctic to blood, but
yeah. It's what we're talking about. Yeah, history,
well,
right?
you're learning history. Yeah,
Ways you learn history. Yeah,
we're living history. We might be the
yeah. I was
last
never
history.
that interested in history when I was younger. Apart from World Wars and stuff like that, I was never really that interested. And everybody, people would say, "Well, wait till you get a bit older, then you'll be fascinated with history." And for
And
some reason,
boom,
that why is that true? I think that's true with a lot of people,
we
right?
mature
They
into
they
wanting
get
to
their interest in
know.
history later, and it is maybe because they're searching for meaning in their life. Like they're trying to figure out, where do I
Yeah,
fit in, as a person, in history or whatever. So you need to know a bit more about history to see, I mean,
that
some
makes
people,
sense.
delve into genealogy, they want to get their family history and then the history of the location and so on, right? So
Have
it's
you
kind
ever
of
done that?
fascinating. You've never done that?
No, have you ever done that?
Oh
Your
yeah,
family
I have. Yes,
genealogy and the DNA,
yeah.
and you know who's who, and
No, I haven't done the
not that.
DNA
You
thing.
did
Have you
it.
done the DNA thing?
I did.
Did you?
It was
So
interesting, and
what?
it was it wasn't worth it because everything I knew, I already knew, and I had nobody. I never found any like cousins or anything like that. I thought it was interesting to do it, and my family did. But my cousin had done a family tree in the 80s and 90s. It was amazing the work she did. But yeah, I did the DNA. I don't care. What are they going to use mine
Yeah,
for?
yeah. You need
I'm
somebody in
not
your
worried
family.
about somebody wanting my DNA for any reason
Yeah. So
whatsoever.
23andMe or something, is that
Oh, what was it? The other one. The other
the
one.
other one?
My
Yeah.
daughter did it. She was fascinated. She found people. Cuz my ex-husband, her father, oh my god, she found people at cousins and relatives that she didn't even know and she contacted them all. So for her
Yeah.
it was an expanding experience. For
Yeah.
her. But for me, it was boring. Nothing came out of it because it was just no. There's nobody. I have no first cousins, and I have one kid, and she's not having kids. So it's like a very. That's it. My brother has no
Yeah.
kids. My one brother has one. That's it. We're at the end of the road.
The end of the road.
What'd you
Well,
find out in your
yeah. No, I
genealogy?
haven't done the DNA analysis.
No, but the
Just checked into sort of, my mom had some sort of background on her side. It goes, we have quite a bit of information going back quite a ways. I mean, when I was young, my parents moved to they immigrated to Canada, and grandparents would visit, and my grandfather had a lot of stories from World War I, World War II, what happened, and that sort of thing. So it's just fascinating in the stories, and then you kind of check some out, and then you do a bit of research yourself and try to get. The best thing is to get a sibling or somebody else, to get really hooked on it, and then they can do all the work, and you can just get information from them, right?
like
But
my
the
cousin
the
did.
records go back quite a ways.
Cool.
You know, it's it's kind of interesting. It's like a hobby sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I did find out. I did visit my mother's hometown when I was in Scotland. Bonnie Bridge, and there
Nice.
at the end of her road, she talked about these Roman ruins right at the end of her street. So, the Romans had built this wall, across, to keep out the hordes of from the north, and basically they were in England and they wanted to keep out the Scottish hordes, so they built this
So you
huge
saw the real
wall.
history. You saw the
Yeah,
real
so it's actually
history.
quite interesting. And then I wish I hadn't seen any of Outlander when I went on my trip, but I was told, yeah, should watch that series. You'll love it, because just from the scenery and so on in Scotland, and it's quite interesting because there's a lot of history incorporated into the story from the different battles and so on. And then it gets you interested in reading about some of the clans and some of the history of the region, and
Fascinating.
and it's actually quite fascinating. So it's yeah, so I quite enjoy
So what
doing.
you saw could it lead you to think that maybe back then we were a violent, bloodthirsty species from what you saw in your real observations of keeping the hordes out?
Well, I think that yeah, I think people were a lot tougher back then, right? Like you didn't live so long,
Right.
so you kind of and we tend to we think a lot more now. We tend to overthink things a lot more, rather they were more action oriented, I think, in the past. You had to be to get food and to
Yeah.
shelter and survive, and there were a lot more threats. You'd meet strangers, and there was always this fear element, right? You didn't know. It was pretty. Yeah, it was a lot different. I think people are very coddled now,
Oh my gosh.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I
people
mean
don't know how to do
anybody
things.
knows
They
from
rely on
history.
technology, and they
Yeah.
don't know how to. If the power goes off, well, you can't look at your phone. So what do you do, right?
Oh wait, you can if you have a charger and a backup.
Yeah, but you need,
I know.
you need a you need a phone signal, and you need. So I think we're not we're very vulnerable, I think, to technological failure. That generally happens when complexity increases, right? The complexity of a society increases so much that the
Yeah.
general person doesn't really have a good knowledge or understanding of how things work anymore, right? There's a reliance on the technology, and it's just always
The
there until it
kids.
isn't, and then when it's not, the
Well, the
shit hits
kids
the
do.
fan,
Everything
sort
I
sort of
see.
thing.
Yeah. I had a question. This is completely out of the left field, but how do you heat your house in Ottawa? Because I was looking at the temperature there, it was 11. It's 16 here. You were 11. And I was just wondering, thinking about that.
Yeah, most houses in Ottawa, for example, they were all heated by coal at the turn of the century, and then the coal would be delivered through chutes in one of the walls, like at the side of the house or something, and be shoveled down into a boiler, and then it was replaced by oil, right? And then
Okay.
most of the houses switched over to when natural gas lines were put in. Canada
Hmm.
has loads of natural gas,
Oh,
so
yeah.
most of the homes are heated by natural gas
Okay. Like
because
us.
it was the cheapest way to go. There's some that are heated by electricity in Ontario, but if you go across to Quebec, it's almost the homes are almost all heated by just electricity.
Is that from hydro?
Yeah, because they have much cheaper
So do
power
I.
because of the big huge hydro plants.
Yeah, so do I actually from the
Yeah,
falls,
so
and
over in
I'm
Gatineau, just across the
98%.
river.
Yeah, I mean, my town is carbon free, 100% by electricity. They just hiked us up by 36%. But I mean, I live in probably the cheapest county in New York. I mean, dirt cheap. So 36%, they never gave us a raise up. I'm still on the grid.
So are
I'm
they
still on that grid.
you have a lot of baseboard heaters, or how does it, like
No, I
my
heat
house is
with wood. And I heat
yeah,
with wood primarily.
okay.
I'm a heat with wood or propane. The problem is they have to truck it in. I'm
Pro
off. I mean, I'm still on the electric line, but I'm off the main path. I'm in the kind of like country area, so it's
Yeah, yeah. So the rural
propane.
areas that didn't get the natural gas piping, I'm talking in the
Right.
cities, it's mostly natural gas
Yeah.
because they
Back
piped up the
here.
city with natural gas, and it's still a lot cheaper than electricity in Ontario. But over in
Oh,
Quebec,
I'm
they
sure.
never bothered with the natural gas because there was no need. The
Wow.
electricity was so cheap.
So
You know,
under Quebec, then there's not a lot of pipelines running under
well,
that
not for
area, huh?
natural gas. There are
Okay.
pipelines to distribute the gas elsewhere, but
Gas stations.
they don't use it for heating. Like,
Gas
what about
stations.
your stove? Is it your so
It's
it's
a
all electric
propane.
for you?
Well, no, because I don't have the money to replace the crap that was here when I bought the house, so it's still a propane cooktop. But
Propane,
I'm only
okay,
one person, and I really don't use a
right?
lot of stuff. It's
Yeah,
propane heats the water, but that's changing because my hot water. I'm going electric. I have to get one. The one I have is 22 years old. I'm going electric for that.
right.
I'd love a solar hot water heater. The gal down the street has a solar hot water heater. I saw the solar panels right on top of her house. It's right by the bathroom. Who knows?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean
know how
that's
we got
very
here.
very efficient. Yeah, I mean solar water heating is like super efficient. It's one of the best things
Yeah.
you can do because if you're electricity or natural gas, that's a lot of energy going into heating that water tank, right? Whereas a
Yeah,
solar water
I know.
system is much more efficient. So yeah.
Well, I'll look at my options if when it happens. It's going to happen because it's going to happen. We own homes.
Yeah,
It
I mean, there
happens.
was a study just came out on mostly it's people have for their stoves it's electric, but there is a lot of people have natural gas stoves in Ottawa, and I'm not sure. I guess it's electric in Quebec. Anyway, the natural gas ones they leak. Natural gas is methane, right? So essentially, so they when you turn them off and turn them on, turn them off, there's some leakage of methane, and that leakage hasn't been accounted for in the climate models and the inventories and stuff. It turns out it's quite significant,
Yeah,
quite
in the
substantial,
house it is. You know
and
that.
there's been more of a
Yuck.
focus on indoor air quality because of virus, right, spreading in airborne, and it's why we wear masks inside or why we have, and yeah, so the air quality is terrible inside a kitchen when you're cooking with a natural gas stove.
Well, I'm going to get rid of
But
it.
yeah, it's
I
awful.
have to.
So
I hate it. It's broken. It doesn't cook right anyway. It's everything's
yeah,
happening.
I mean they heat up very fast, right? So
Yeah.
there's reasons why they became
The
kind of
one thing it
dominant.
does is I can food. I grow and can, and it's harder to do the pressure canning on an electric stove, so I have to look for just the right thing. It's an art form. So that's what I
Yeah,
do. That's my thing here is growing,
yeah.
canning, and preserving and putting it away. And I haven't gone
So
out forever and shopped. I don't have to.
yeah, so getting back to our topic,
Yeah, let's go.
have
This
you ever
always
scuba
happens to
dived?
us. No. And I love
Yeah.
water, but I,
Have you
I,
ever
I lived on the
snorkeled?
water. Snorkeling I have done.
Snorkeling.
No
Okay.
big deal
So
though, but I mean nothing extravagant deep. Had a boat, I've canoed, there's a lot of lakes
yeah,
here. I'd like to get a kayak, but nope. Nope.
yeah. I mean I learned to dive in high school, scuba dive, grade 10. The school had a pool, and I thought, hey, this looks cool. I could be Jacques Cousteau type and scuba
Yeah.
dive, right? So,
Yeah.
but my son, my middle son Neil, he's 19 now. He's really keen on scuba diving, so he got certified, and then he wanted to take an advanced diving course. So I thought, oh, I might as well. I'll do, because after my Charleston dive, being carried out to sea, I thought maybe I should upgrade and do some. Do some some more courses, advanced courses. So I did the
Oh,
I did a course in the summer for advanced diving. It covered a lot of
that's
interesting
cool.
things like deep water diving, wreck diving, buoyancy diving. You could do ice diving in the winter if you want through this place and
Have you talked
stuff like.
about this on on your channel?
Pardon me.
Have you talked about this on your channel? Your
Uh,
experience with diving and all this?
Not a lot.
So interesting, Paul. Somebody said here right in the chat that Paul Beckwith should probably experiment with YouTube live streaming himself sometime.
Hmm. Yes,
I
I
could
should try.
teach
I should do
you.
it when I'm on a dive or something.
I'll teach you if you
I
want to
should.
do a show. Yeah,
Mhm.
you're great.
Yeah.
It's
So,
fun to
well,
talk
thank
to
you.
you. Well,
Thank
we
you.
go
So anyway, I
everywhere.
went diving. So just this last summer, we went for a weekend down to the St. Lawrence, and we dived. We did a wreck dive. Shallow. We did a wreck dive in fairly deep water, cold water. But the St. Lawrence is not that deep, but there's a strong current. And we did a drift dive where you enter the water in one place and then you drift several miles down the river and then you exit. So you have to like split the
Really?
cars up into two locations. And we went in the water and it looked a bit stormy. And when we were doing the drift dive, we could see it was like somebody was shooting underwater flash photography pictures. You could see this
Wow.
bright light, but it was a lightning. And when we surfaced, we were right in the middle of the storm, and there seemed to
That's
be lightning all
scary.
around us. Now,
Holy
imagine you've got a metal tank on
No.
your back, and you're in the water,
Mm-mm.
and there's lightning bursts all around. So,
No.
I mean, what would you do? What's the best thing to do? I would say go back under the water, right? Go back to the bottom, stay under
Yeah,
shallow
what are you going to
water,
do
and
with the
wait till the
tank?
storm passes, and then exit. Well, we didn't do that because we were with instructors, and they said,
Oh,
"Okay, everybody out of the water as
no
fast as
matter what.
possible."
Really?
So, so that's
Oh.
what we did. But it was pretty dicey,
We
And
have
then we did a
somebody.
night dive as
Sorry,
well.
bro. His car is buried in the St. Lawrence. Sorry. I saw it. I had to put it
Yeah,
up. Oh my gosh. We have some
and
funny
then
people.
we did a night dive
Thank God
as
you're
as
here.
well. So
You
the
did a
night dive
nighttime
was
dive?
was fascinating. I mean, it's you have it was extremely murky too. Like the water was murky water is bad enough during the daytime, but at night it's
Yeah.
adds another complexity because you've
Well, you
got
gotta
your
have light.
flashlights on and you can hardly see. You can just see the person in front of you. That's about it.
Wow. These are pretty
So
good experiences. This has been really interesting. I'm so happy that you shared this stuff. It's
yeah,
been
so
cool. I
the
mean,
if
we've
they
been all
find the
around the
ship,
world.
so if they find the
Yeah.
ship, I mean they'll try to do a an archaeological survey of the whole site. So depending on the time that they have, they'll try to get very, very detailed, close up. So
Yeah.
they'll operate the ROVs very, very close to the bottom, with high resolution cameras and good lighting, and they'll try to
I'm
document
excited.
the whole site and the debris field, and then they'll do maps, digitized
Well, I'm
maps
going
of
to
everything.
follow
And
it. I'm following
yeah,
it,
yeah, it's
and
going to
I'm
be
going to
actually
show you who I'm following
it's
really
going to be
quickly.
actually
This
quite
guy,
okay.
Christian Catline. That he was
So
the one I used in the video. He's a sea ice physicist, marine robotics, and polar ocean observation. He was also on the Polar Stern. So I'm following this dude, and I'm going to see how it
okay,
goes. It'll be interesting.
so
It will
they're
be
going out.
interesting.
They're leaving this weekend, I believe.
Yeah, he already made a video that he was in Cape Town on his
Okay,
way.
so they leave from South Africa and then
Yeah. Yep.
head
Yep.
south and go
That's what
down.
they're
Yeah,
doing.
I mean, most people have probably heard of the Franklin expeditions in the Arctic, like the like marine archaeologists from Parks Canada. They found the Franklin and the Erebus, I guess. The ships in the Arctic, and they've been looking for years. I mean, they found them just I don't know, in the last decade or so. And the funny story is that when this ship went down in the Arctic, the mast was sticking up from the ship for the longest time, and the Inuit living up in the Arctic, they knew exactly where that mast was sticking up, and they knew exactly where the ship was, and they told Parks
Really?
Canada, and Parks Canada looked everywhere else for like 5 years, 10 years, and then they finally looked at where the First Nations people told them the ship was, and they found
Wow.
it. Like, talk about
This
stupid,
is
right?
such
Talk
cool
about
stuff.
not listening to the accumulated knowledge from the local people, right? I mean,
That's
wouldn't you look at where you
yes,
were told the ship was
of
first? And
course. Yes, it makes sense.
but no, they
Jeez.
knew better. They had their records or something, and they just didn't listen to what the local people told them, and
Um,
they spent years, and there you go.
Wasted time.
Yeah,
Ah.
exactly.
All right. Well, let's see here, Paul. We've been about an hour and 22 minutes, but we've been, yeah, because I had a 9-minute video. But all right.
Yeah,
Let's see if here's another question. Dick
yeah. If there's
Wimple.
any last questions before we wrap up,
Yep. Paul,
that would be
aren't
great.
you bummed they're burning all the CO2 to leave Earth behind because we burnt too much, CO2 for it to be habitable down here? Are you bummed? Oh boy, this could go into a deep dive. How do we feel about all this? It's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, that's a whole other program, I
So,
think, right?
yeah. Yeah.
We should get into that sort of thing.
I would
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to give you your own playlist. You've been on here enough.
I've been reading a couple really interesting papers, and it's about the premise is that humans are getting we're getting a lot dumber in our ideas and our discourse and our language, the language that we use. And part of that, or part of it, or a big factor is the smartphones and the way our brains are we're always jumping from one thing to another, attention spans lowering and stuff. So anyway, they studied all of the different words that were used, and words that were used sort of in creative thought versus words that were used in less creative thought, and they
Mm.
see a sharp transition of the discourse, over the
So we're
last
going
few
to
decades.
stupid ourselves to extinction.
Yeah. So
We're going to
I'm gonna
stupid
do a video
extinction.
on those particular
Cool.
topics. It's a
All
very, very
right.
interesting study,
All right. Well,
and what we
everybody
can do,
here knows your channel. I
to
mean,
reverse it.
yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck. better you than me. And that is actually something that would be a challenge. I mean, I've been looking at things like inoculation theory and how to inoculate kids from believing bullshit, basically.
Yes.
How to stop people from getting suckered into stuff. But I won't even. I've that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of infinite things to learn. All right, wait, one more. Oh, that's Patrick. Patrick, he has watched it. The OMTech video. Patrick's going to always ask about OMTech because Dave did it. Dave at Just Have a Think did a video on it. He wanted to know if you've seen it. You should
No, but
watch
I'll
it.
have
It's
to watch
actually
it. I
good.
haven't-
It is
yeah.
good. It really is good. Dave did a great job. He did a great job on it. All right. So, thank you. I think
Okay,
we're
well,
good.
thank you.
I think we've had a great conversation. And guys, thank you. And don't forget, follow Paul. He has a phenomenal channel, which you well know. All of you that are here, because everybody's a Paul fan here, as I am. And we've had a good conversation. I had a good time. It's great. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was
All
great.
right, sweetheart. We'll do it again.
Okay,
Say hi
all
to
right.
the family and thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye, Sandy.
everyone.